Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To welcome you on this Wednesday evening with myself, Inayat Wadi, our viewers, our listeners on the various platforms of Salam Media. Once again, it's Wednesday night, so it's in conversation with myself, Inayat Wadi. And there are two parts to the broadcast this evening. And the first part will be focusing entirely on the case of Ziyadh Hurzook. Now, we know that there have been allegations of terror financing that have been leveled against Ziyad Hurzook. But this raises many a question, and particularly with regard to double standards being applied as far as these allegations are concerned. Now, the attorney, obviously, who has been representing Ziyadh Hurzook has been attorney Yousha, who will be one of our guests this evening, who is a member also of the Muslim Lawyers Association and researcher at the MRN, Dr. Ahmed Jazbhay. Now, the MRN has been following this case, and there have been a number of articles that have been written, one by Iqbal Jasad as well, that was around January the 23rd. And he raises many an important question, particularly for civil society organizations who are concerned about human rights and abuse of power, as has been in the case of 35-year-old Ziyad Hurzook. And there are a number of questions that are asking is what are the drivers? Who is actually driving all of this? And again, some say that possibly it could be a conspiracy theories. But the fact of the matter is, uh, we know that a number of people, a number of personalities, one of them being Willem Els. And I recall doing an interview with him a while back where he wrote an article talking about South Africa importing terror into the country. And we've heard about him publicly gloating at the arrest of Ziyad Hurzook. And he even went on to say that if they can bring down this case and successfully prosecute this guy, it will demonstrate to others out there that there will be consequences for these acts of terror funding, which has been criminalized in our legislation. Now, to unpack all of this, we are joined by Dr. Harun Ahmed Jazbhay and attorney Yousha Tayub. As we welcome both of you onto the broadcast this evening. Well, we're just waiting for Yusha and Dr. Harun to appear on a screen. And clearly, when one looks at some of the concerns that has been actually raised, is when one looks at financing, particularly and funding of humanitarian organizations. Now, that obviously has come under the radar. I believe that we have lost both Yusha Tayeb and Harun Jasbhay. We are going to try and get them. But this article by Al Jasad actually unpacks a lot with regard to South Africa. And again, we know South Africa being grey listed also, and countries that are under the threat of being grey listed for terror financing. And I see Dr. Harun Jasbhay is on a line right now. We will still try and get all of you shut tape. But Dr. Jazbhay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome. Dr. Jazbhay, Assalamu alaikum. Well, I'm sure some gremlins have actually crept in, and it appears as if we are battling to get both of them. But again, the questions that have been raised is who are the authorities that have arrested Hurzook trying to appease. And we know Yousha Tayeb has appeared on behalf of Hurzook again, and he managed to get some bail, so that is actually good news. But again, is Hurzook being used as a distraction to appease the US and local Zionists? And when you look at the NPA, again, the case of double standards, we know many South Africans are actually serving in the IDF. There have been dockets that have been lying for years with the NPA. Until now, not a single one of them has been prosecuted. And this is the reason why we are raising this question of double standards. Dr. Jazbhay, I'm hoping you can hear me now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, I see you, Dr. Jazbhay, but perhaps we should try and get hold of him over the telephone. And I'm sure that there are possibly some network issues that are cropping up. So what we'll do is let us go for a quick break. We'll come back and hopefully we will get Dr. Harun Jazbhay.
Local and international investment and advisory services from an award-winning firm? Look no further than the Belmont Mayer Group, your gateway to unparalleled investment and wealth management. At Belmont Mayer, we believe in the art of wealth creation, a meticulous process fueled by our unwavering commitment to excellence. With a focus on providing elite alternative investments and quality advice, we also pride ourselves on maximizing value for our esteemed investors, as seen through our consistent outperformance. Your financial success is our top priority. Join us at Belmont Mayer and experience the difference firsthand. Ready to embark on a journey of greatness? Contact us today. Reach out to the Belmont Mayer Group on 078 786 1698. Call or WhatsApp or email us at info@belmontmayer.com. Elevate your financial future with Belmont Mayer, where every detail matters.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Penny Appeal's Education First campaign helps children to get access to quality education.
I'm 14 years old. When I grow up, I'd like to be a scientist.
We believe every child belongs at school,
And we want education, a better education.
learning and dreaming their way to a better future. With your help, we can provide classrooms, desks, stationery packs, and school shoes. Help make these dreams a reality. Visit www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Attach wages in a cook line. Or a cook line thing.
Well, we welcome back, and we do apologize for the earlier glitches. I see Yousha Tayub is on as well, and also Dr. Ahmed Harun Jazbhay. Yousha, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm at a seated
Yes,
venue. I hope you can see me.
Perfect. Jazakallah. In fact, I can see you well. Alhamdulillah, you're looking good. You're sounding good as well. Dr. Jazbhay, assalamu alaikum to you as well.
Walaikum salam. Shukran for having me. I hope these technical glitches are over.
Well, it is, inshallah. Let's hope so as well. Yousha, let's just begin. Obviously, you have been representing Ziyadh Hurzook as well. And there have been a number of issues. There have been a number of questions that have been raised. And we are talking about, double standards, particularly in the case of Ziyadh Hurzook. And we know that there have been allegations of terror financing that have been leveled against him. And, this has been of major concern. And we knew at some point in time, South Africa will be under the radar. It will be under the spotlight. And again, when one talks about financing and where monies are actually going to, Just provide us with an overview and looking at it purely from a legal perspective, Yousha, as far as the case of Ziyadh Hurzook goes.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm just trying to move to a quieter place. In essence, the situation really is the legislation permits this type of prosecution. So, Poktetara adopted into our law post 2001 was essentially a copy and paste of legislation from the West in order to become a part of the international community. And so, although we objected to the legislation at the time, it seems like to us a political decision um, to implement this legislation, particularly now, because of the kind of pressure that we seeing being put on the state to prosecute IDF soldiers. We recently had the comment by Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, I am Hamas, and they tried to do the dirty on him. And so they're looking for lesser individuals um, to persecute. But Alhamdulillah, we do what we can to defend Ziyad and others who may find themselves in that position.
Yes, Jazakallah for that, Yusha. Dr. Jazbhay, now I know the MRN has been following this case very, very closely as well. We've seen a number of articles that have appeared, one Iqbal Jasat as well, where he raises a number of questions. And again, looking at it from a standards perspective, now clearly, he questions the double standards, and as Yusha had mentioned, against what has been under the radar and what has been under the spotlight has been the prosecution of those that are serving in the IDF. But looking at where we are, and particularly when you're looking at individuals like Ziyadh Hurzook being targeted, just your thoughts.
Yeah, no, of course, there are glaring double standards in the application of this legislation. If we look at, for example, that this legislation or the financial, legislation specifically seems to target, NGOs as opposed to state sponsors of terrorism. If we look at, for example, the South African Zionist Federation, the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, individuals such as Philip Kowitz of Cape Union Mart, who has donated millions to the Israeli occupation forces. Yet none of these have been flagged by the financial task force. This is because the legislation, as well as the international legislation, when it comes to the grey listing issues, targets individuals, and it targets those who, for example, individuals and organizations that have been deemed terrorists by predominantly Western institutions, Western countries, such as the United States. You get arbitrarily be put on these the list of finances of terrorism, and you have no recourse to getting your name off this list, especially if you're not an American citizen. So Ziyad's case, it's what 11,500 rand compared to millions that have been given to the terror forces of the of the Israeli entity, which is actively committing a genocide. So there's obviously glaring double standards. We've seen this even in the case where, when it comes to corporate interests of corporates, especially in the DRC, who are de facto funding an insurgency, especially in the east of the DRC. So Ziyad is a fall guy. South Africa needs to urgently get off this grey list, and Ziyad is unfortunately this fall guy that to attorney-client privilege, and the matter is sub judice. But I would argue that it will be very difficult for to be prosecuted, despite because at the time even that he allegedly gave this donation, it was um, the humanitarian organization in question was not on the US list. So this is definitely a witch hunt. South Africa is desperate to get off this grey list, and this has more political connotations, political challenges, as opposed to real finances of terrorism, because many others get away scot-free, give millions when it's a Muslim, and gives a Muslim NGO, a humanitarian organization.
Yes, Yusha, just again, I just like to look at this from a legal perspective and look at our criminal justice system, in particular when we're talking about this grey listing. Now, the United States of America decides to grey list South Africa, and again, looking at our judiciary, legitimizing these illegal listings by the United States of America. Now, just where does this actually leave us, as far as our criminal justice system is concerned, and particularly when one looks at the National Prosecutions Authority as well? Because again, we've got a constitution, we have a Bill of Rights, and all of that is there to protect the citizens of South Africa. If you could unmute, please, Isha.
Before we get there, I'd like to just add to what Harun was saying. So we know from the Gaza docket, which we lodged in 2010 when we brought a review application, that various ministers in the government at the time had met with the Jewish Board of Deputies, and there were discussions in regard to the Gaza docket, which is why there's probably been no movement on it for a substantial period of time, despite the overwhelming evidence. So I have no doubt of the extent of the interference in the current matter. Insofar as the criminal procedure is concerned, because we've adopted this anti-terror, Pogdatara is not the only legislation we've adopted, but in essence, all the legislation that we've adopted into our law post 2001 criminalizes this terror conduct, and it's terror financing, terror participation. There was a revamp of the regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act. Even though that act previously criminalized certain conduct, it was all tightened up in order to appease the masters. So these are political decisions incorporated into our criminal justice system on account of the war of terror. So it seems to us that this government, which was previously classified a terrorist organization, was happy to abandon its history, its past, its struggle, and to simply import into our law legislation that it was previously guilty of, despite the fact that there are legitimate struggles, very legitimate struggles, that continue and now get prosecuted in terms of a criminal justice system uh, for laws to protect the oppression, to continue the oppression. And so, in essence, one of the things I have been saying in media is that we're constantly told in this country about our religious freedoms, and certainly this case is beginning to show that up, despite and there's substantially other areas of law um, where we don't have religious freedom. So I've never agreed with that proposition. But if anything, this case is going to highlight to the South African community that that religious freedom, certainly for Muslims, does not exist, and is in fact going to be criminalized. Some of our charity, our obligatory charity, is going to be criminalized, and we're going to have to face consequences for fighting oppression.
Yes, Yusha. I see Dr. Ahmed Jazbhay is on with us telephonically. Dr. Jazbhay, there was quite an interesting article that was written by Mariam Juma. And Mariam Juma actually speaks of the weaponization of the Financial Action Task Force, particularly in the case of Ziyadh Hurzook. And this actually is very, very glaring. And she goes on to say that the weaponization of the FATF, in which South Africa is actually very, very complicit. And just your comments on this observation.
Is this politicize this issue in order to get off the grey list is rather concerning. It's being used selectively. Because as I mentioned earlier about the individuals and organizations that donate to the Israeli Defense Force, even in the midst of an ongoing genocide, even in the midst, for example, with Philip Krowitz in 2014, who donated millions to the IDF during Operation Protective Edge, as the Israelis call it, nothing was done with it. There was no grey listing in that respect. There was no, blacklisting, grey listing, or whatever else you may have. What was instead done was that he received an award, and the authorities in this country let that go slip through. We have, for example, the other laws as well. In terms of the Israeli South Africans who fight in Israeli terror forces in contravention of the Foreign Military Assistance Act. Yet nothing is done to prosecute them. Yet, despite overwhelming evidence provided by civil society organizations, MRN, PSC, and other groupings. So we ask the question, why now? And it is obvious that, Ziyadh Hurzook is the fall guy who is being sacrificed so that South Africa can get off this grey listing. So there's double standards. There's double standards all around the world, and in South Africa in particular. That the NPA under Shamila Batoy has objectively failed to prosecute on state capture, failed to prosecute on numerous issues. Yet now it's trying to use a legitimate donation of a small donation, be it to serve an example and to criminalize Muslims for wanting to assist the downtrodden around the world in contravention of our own humanitarian principles.
Yes, Yousha, I just need your take on Muslims, and as Muslims, how do we actually look at this? And again, as Dr. Jazbhay speaks about double standards in each and every way, and also in terms of how terrorism is actually classified in this country, should we be on our guard? And what can we actually take from the Ziyadh Hurzook case?
Inayat, the reference to Shamila Batoy is quite real, because in all my years of practice, I've never seen the head of the NBTP sign a charge sheet, and she has in fact done so in this particular case. I personally have the charge sheet, and I've seen her signature on it. So this is at quite a high level. We all know post 2001. About what they call the war on terror, which essentially became the war of terror, and associated with that was the definition of terrorism. So any form of legitimate resistance at the behest primarily of the U.S. and its Western counterparts is terror. So whatever they classify to be terror, Arun made reference to it very, very early, and this is one of the difficulties I believe the state will face, is that the organization to whom he donated to was only placed on that list in 2020 in an ex parte, what they call a one-party, what he refers to as arbitrary, application made in the U.S. court to have this organization declared a terror organization. This Al-Sadaqah was never given notice of it, similar to Al-Qaeda, simply being placed on the list on the basis of a one-party application to a U.S. court, a U.S. listing, and then a U.S. sharing of that listing with the UN, who seem to simply endorse those lists as and when they are produced. So terror is now defined on a USA standard, which is the biggest oppressor in the world, and its Western counterparts who support it in every instance. So the definition of terrorism is very fickle currently, based purely in the whim and fancy of the USA. And unfortunately, we've adopted that into our legislation, and this government will now have to enforce it. Insofar as the effect on Muslims is concerned, um, the the issue really is your religion is being challenged, has been challenged for a very long time. It was never a war on terror, it was a war of terror in which only Muslims have been victims. We continue to be victims. The idea behind all of this is to eliminate us as a religion because we represent the only moral compass left. Other religions have been compromised, people have been compromised, morality has been lost, and so we need to be broken completely. And a prosecution of Ziyadh Hurzook is a part of that process in order to limit to a very large extent the charity that Muslims of South Africa give. We know that in every cause in the world, South African Muslims have been very generous, have participated. So the idea is to make inroads into that, to get people to be cautious, and we need to react by doubling, tripling our efforts, and giving to all causes that we are obliged to give to. If this government wants to take what I call a myopic view of jihad, that's, that's in their discretion. They need to be taught that jihad is bigger than, than, than just what they see as violent aggression. It is resistance against oppression. We know that there is hardly a country in the world currently that is not killing, persecuting Muslims. And if South African Muslims don't wake up, we're also going to become a persecuted people. It's a message being sent. They're challenging our charity now. They're going to challenge our livelihoods after this. And so we need to prioritize Allah. We need to prioritize the Deen. We need to understand that our only loyalty is to Allah. We've said this before in the masjid applications, in every other case we've been in. There can be no compliance with any law if that is in breach of Allah's law. So we're obliged to give for charity. Jihad is compulsory on us in certain instances. We are taught a teaching that simply says, he who funds the fighter is as though he has fought, and who doesn't want that as a Muslim, inshallah.
Jazakallah for that, Yousha. Dr. Ahmed, what Yousha is saying is absolutely important. This is crucial for us, particularly as a Muslim ummah in South Africa. Now, I recall a few years ago having done a broadcast, and the statement I had made is, South Africans enjoy freedom and absolute freedom and relative freedom in terms of our deen, in terms of practice of our religion. And my guest at that point in time mentioned, don't be fooled, this may be short lived. And this was a statement that was made a few years ago. And now we have incidents like these that actually put us in the spotlight. In my introduction, I cited the name of Willem Els, who talk about South Africa importing terror. And this was a man that was gloating at the allegations and the arrest of Ziyadh Hurzook as well. Now, we can see from many recent examples and instances where this type of thing is actually started happening. We've seen what has happened with the Tulsi twins. All of this obviously sending some very, very strong signals to the Muslim community that we cannot be fooled into believing that we have absolute freedom of religion in this country.
Most certainly, Inayat. I mean, as Yousha pointed out, that as Muslims, we don't see each other as individuals or South Africans or Zimbabweans or whatever the case may be. We are part of a global ummah, and we want to help our brothers and sisters around the world. That said, we've been resting on our laurels for a very long time. And, with the Tulsi twins case now with this, it's clear that, in my opinion, our enemies, and here I state the Zionists, are now on the counteroffensive. After the ICJ case in January last year, they were on the back foot. The current genocide in Gaza has turned public opinion, international public opinion, against it. And closer to home, they have now, in the last few months, have gone on the counteroffensive. And they have used local lackeys such as Willem Els. We know a very famous professor from the University of the Free State, which has been gloating as well. So we are now run the risk of going in the direction, for example, of India, which, even though it has, 150 to 200 million Muslims, they are effectively second-class citizens under the microscope, consistently under the microscope of, the war of terror under the Modi-led BJP government. So we need to organize. We cannot continue to work in our cocoons. We need to organize. It's clear that our enemies have mounted a counteroffensive, and now we need to organize. Try to turn the tables, especially with regards to the South Africans who have served in the Israeli occupation forces. That has been going on for very long. We've heard that this case, if I heard Yousha correctly, was signed off by Shamila Bertoy herself, and that is very rare. I stand corrected on that point, which clear that there is a lot of political interest in this, and it's clear that Muslims cannot just worry about us building masjids at every corner of our communities. That is not going to help us survive come the next 5, 10 to 20 years. What will allow us to survive and thrive is to organize.
Yes, Dr. Ahmed. Yousha, I know at this case, at this point in time, bail has been granted to Ziyadh Hurzook, and I suppose, there isn't
I can
much,
hear you.
as far as the case is concerned, possibly, I'm not too sure how much one can actually share as far as this case is concerned. But just, looking at where we are at this point in time, just what are some of your observations as far as the actual case goes?
Yeah, so look, the matter, we got bail yesterday. The matter is now being postponed to the 3rd of March this year. The request at the end of the bail hearing was that the matter be postponed for what is called further investigation, which was quite surprising because the investigating officer, in his testimony in opposing the bail, indicated that investigations were complete. And when the magistrate asked the prosecutor what is outstanding, she simply said that she wasn't handling the matter. There was an advocate from the Northwest DPP's office of the Hawks, DPCI, CAT's team, and he had the docket and she couldn't say. So when we go back to court on the 3rd, we'll ask for what is outstanding. We want copies of the contents of the docket as quickly as possible. We want to be able to make representations posted, considering the number of concessions we got out in the bail application. We want to see the reasoning behind failing to withdraw these charges. Again, we made reference to a transaction of 75 Rand from another donor, which was not prosecuted, so we want to understand that in the context of this prosecution. We are also contemplating the potential of bringing other actions, which I don't want to disclose right now, to try and force the state to produce the documentation that we found in the Gaza documents showing ministerial meetings with South African Board of Deputies and the Zionist Federation people um, indicating involvement, interference. So we've got a long haul here. But until we get the docket, the criminal matter is simply going to be postponed for a while. Whether they transfer it to the High Court or not, I can't say for certain now whether it happens or not. But in any event, we'll deal with it in whichever court we've allocated. Um, yeah, and that's it for now. I mean, bail was our priority after the arrest. We managed to secure that, alhamdulillah. And we'll now see what the state does. They the prosecuting authority, I call the persecuting authority in this matter. And we'll see what they want to do on the 3rd of March this year.
Well, Jazakallah for that, Yousha, and also to you, Dr. Ahmed Jazbhay. We thank both of you for coming on and discussing this matter with us. And I'm sure we will be following up further on developments. But for now, we thank both of you for your time with us right here on Salam Media. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam
Wa
wa
alaikum
rahmatullahi
salam
wa
wa
barakatuh.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dr. Ahmed Jazbhay and Yousha Tayub with us on the case of Ziyadh Hurzook, and more importantly, we've heard the word double standards over and over again repeated by both Yousha and Dr. Ahmed Jazbhay. And again, a huge concern for us as Muslims in this country, just considering what we see happening around us. And again, let us not retreat into a comfort zone thinking that all is well in this country. There are massive challenges for us as Muslims in this country, and these challenges will obviously be coming, will be a lot more frequent as well, and possibly it could be even a lot more serious challenges that we will be faced. So let us not be fooled to say that we are allowed to build our mosques and we go to madrasas and we go this, we do that, and we are allowed to practice our religion. Yeah, but and this sometimes seems to be the sentiment that is expressed over and over again. But we retreat in our comfort zone. But when incidents like this happens, actually Muslims are on the spotlight, and again, the warning signs are there, and we've seen it with a number of incidents over the years. So that's let's just tread with caution, but more importantly, let us be vigilant about what is actually taking place around us. With that, we're going to go for a break, and we come back, and our focus is going to be on the Gaza ceasefire. And again, we raise a question that what is the bigger picture behind this Gaza ceasefire? Again and again, we've seen the images coming through. We've seen spectacular images, actually, especially in the last few days, where we've seen mass migration of people from the south to the north of Gaza as Palestinians make their way to their homes, to the rubble, to the mountains of rubble as well. But again, let us look at the bigger picture and again, question the fact that is there really a cause for celebration, or is this just a temporary ceasefire? And there will be more to come. And to unpack all of that, we will be joined by Professor Jeff Halper out of Israel, Usama Nazal out of the West Bank, out in Jenin, and Alan Howitz, South African Jews for Palestine here in South Africa.